Five-star center recruit Derik Queen for the Indiana Hoosiers has pushed back his commitment date. What does that mean for Indiana?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Well, five-star center Derik Queen has pushed back his decision date from early January or mid-January to sometime in February. And what does that mean for Indiana? We're going to talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. We're also going to talk about some of Mike Woodson's comments after the Ohio State win for Indiana basketball. Always like to see what the head coach has to say about his team's performance. And then we'll give some updates on Indiana women's basketball, who got a nice win yesterday in Big Ten play, and also some football transfer portal updates for head coach Curt Cignetti. So that's what's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. If you're on YouTube, become part of the family. Hit that subscribe button. It is free. That's all you got to do. Helps us out tremendously. You can also like the video as well. Comment down below anything from this video, anything on your mind. I love seeing what you all have to say, and I like to engage with you as much as I can. So be sure that you do that. And if you're on any of your podcasting platforms, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So you can subscribe there, turn on notifications so you know each and every time we post a new episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Five-star center Derik Queen, he has pushed back his decision day just a hair. According to Peaks.com, the Indiana 247 site, Derik Queen has pushed back the decision time, and he was going to decide in this middle of January at the Hoop Hall Classic in Springfield in the middle of this month. But apparently, he has decided to change that, and it will be sometime in February. And of course, his final 4 teams are Kansas, Maryland, Houston, and us, the Indiana Hoosiers. And this has been a big-time recruit for Mike Woodson and this staff. I mean, this kid can absolutely play. Go watch his film. He can handle the basketball. He's a fierce competitor around the rim, and he's just an athletic freak. I mean, this guy is he is just an athlete. And you look at him, he's a center, 6'10", 240. We've talked about this guy out of Monteverde, Florida, and just his physical stature and just how good of a player he is. But I think it's important for us to understand how important this is for Indiana. Now, it seems to be that the feeling is more towards the Maryland side of things. But that doesn't mean that Indiana is still not in this, right? It doesn't mean Indiana is not still a part of this commitment, and they are going to be in this until it comes down to the end. And here's one thing, or I guess a couple of things that are really important here. A, Derik Queen has visited all 4 of those schools numerous times. He has visited all 4, including Indiana. He has been here a couple of times. What's also really important, and I think the major thing that is keeping Indiana in this recruitment and in this battle is Liam McNeely, who is already committed and with the Indiana Hoosiers. Not only is he committed, he signed with Indiana for that 2024 class. He's the 6'7", 210 power forward, 5-star for Mike Woodson in Indiana. So that's what's important here too. And they are like best friends. They played together at Monteverde Academy in Florida. They're like best friends. And so you can't tell me that doesn't play a huge role here and play a factor here. Sometimes we see guys go play with their best friends and sometimes they don't, right? You have to remember, we're talking about 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, give or take in the age frame, right? You're talking about very young kids that are deciding their future. And so they're going to do whatever they want to do, and they're going to do whatever they think is best for them. Why should that be Indiana? Well, you also get to play with Liam McNeely, your power forward. And when you start looking at what Indiana's going to lose next year, they're not going to lose a ton in the size category. And that may not be in the favor of Indiana, believe it or not, because look at the seniors on this team. Xavier Johnson, right? Your redshirt 6th-year senior. Anthony Leal, your guard. He's a senior. Anthony Walker, he only had 1 year of eligibility when he came from Miami. He'll be gone. And then you have Trey Galloway, who's also a senior guard. But here's the big thing, right? You still have Khalil Ware, who's a sophomore, and you also have Malik Reneau, who's a sophomore, that are going to be playing in those same exact positions that Derik Queen is going to be playing in. So, and you also have Mackenzie Mbako, who's in there as well as a freshman, as a 5-star freshman McDonald's All-American on the team. So look at it from the Derik Queen perspective. Is Indiana the place you want to go if they've already got some really, really good talent there? I don't know. I mean, I think you have to take that into consideration here, given the fact that look, Derik Queen could go and start just about anywhere next year, or at least be the absolute go-to number 2 when it comes to the center position. And he could be the backup center for Indiana as a freshman, and maybe he's okay with that. But I don't know if he is, right? I don't know if he is. And yeah, if you go to Maryland, you're probably going to be the starter there. I mean, let's just be honest. You're probably going to be the starter at Maryland. You would probably be the starter at Houston. You would probably be the starter at Kansas when Hunter Dickinson is gone. So I don't know. I don't know when it comes to Indiana. I think we're there. I think we're in it for the 12th overall player in the country. And what Indiana has going for him is Liam McNeely. And I think that'd be a really strong duo for the future, because I think McNeely's going to come in and get developed and be that guy down the road. I don't think he comes in and starts immediately over Reneau or Mbako, as long as everybody stays, right? We got the era of the transfer portal. You never know who's going to be on this stupid team, and any team really, right? With the transfer portal, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so, that's why I say it that way. It's frustrating, really, because you just never know who's going to be on your roster, and you're having to deal with high school recruiting, and then you're having to deal with your college, your re-recruiting of college kids. Like, it's unbelievable. So what does this mean for Indiana? The fact that he pushed his commitment date back? I don't think a whole lot. I really don't. I don't think it really affects Indiana. Maybe gives them a little bit more time to make a pitch, right? To make a pitch and say, hey, this is where you want to be. I feel okay about the Hoosiers here. Not great, but I feel okay, and I think we're still in it. I would put Indiana at number 2. I would put Indiana at number 2 behind Maryland right now to land the 5-star center, Derik Queen. It'll be sometime in February. We'll be all over it here on Locked On Hoosiers. So be sure you stay tuned here. Be sure you're checking back in. We'll have some more thoughts and some more coverage, and hopefully some commitment episodes and some excitement episodes when it comes to Derik Queen, the 5-star center, choosing between Houston, Kansas, Maryland, and Indiana coming up in February. Well, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look at head coach Mike Woodson's comments following the big win for the Indiana Hoosiers over the Ohio State Buckeyes over the weekend. See what Woody had to say about his team's performance and one of their better performances of the year so far. That's coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up. Final week just got done. Isn't that crazy? Playoffs are here. Isn't that wild? But there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Just to place the bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. It's a no-brainer. What are you doing if you're not on FanDuel? The app is easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live games, same parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. Shout out to all of you everydayers out there who are here each and every day, whether it be Monday through Friday when we post brand new episodes or on the weekends when we do some bonus episodes for reaction for games over the weekend. I do appreciate you being here, whether you're on YouTube or any of your audio platforms. You are the reason that we are here. Let's take a look at what head coach Mike Woodson had to say about the big win for Indiana basketball over Ohio State at home on Saturday night. We try to do this every time. We've done it a lot after losses to kind of get what Mike Woodson had to say and how they can get better after some of those nasty losses. But it's nice to have one after a big win. And I think Woody was impressed. I've listened to the press conference a couple of times, but want to kind of go through some of the bigger questions and responses from him for you and kind of react to that a little bit here on the show. Talking about Malik Reneau, had great things to say. And this was talked about a lot on the broadcasts on Saturday as well. Said this summer, he put in a lot of work. Said never really left campus, got his weight down. He said the baby fat that he had last year is trimmed down. So you just got to tip your hat to him. He put the work in this summer and it's paying off. And yeah, I would say absolutely. I mean, the guy looks like a junior or senior as a sophomore, and he has become, especially these last couple of weeks, man, he has become Indiana's go-to guy. I mean, when Indiana needs a bucket, they're going to Malik Reneau. The guy's had like 2 or 3 career performances in the last couple of weeks. Like, he is Indiana's offense right now. And it takes the pressure off of Khalil Ware. Now, imagine if they both start doing that consistently like we know they can, plus some elite guard play from Xavier Johnson. And if CJ Gunn decides to keep playing like he is, y'all better watch out, man. This is going to be a really, really good Indiana team. This is a really important one here. A question was asked on the improvement of the three-point defense, especially in the second half against Ohio State. He said, well, it wasn't like we were touching them. He said, I thought our defense from the 15-minute mark on was pretty good. But the second chance shots they got, they had good looks. And he's not lying about that. Their shots were, especially on their second and third opportunities, Ohio State had good looks. They just didn't knock them down. And the Hoosiers have to be thankful for that. He said, we were just playing awful rebounding the basketball tonight. They had good looks spraying the ball back out. He said they were bouncing funny and we just couldn't come up with it. And I said that on the reaction episode. He goes on to say, for the most part, when we were settling in our half-court defense, we were pretty good in terms of switching up and touching and making sure guys weren't just facing up, shooting threes in our face. And I want to say something about that. I kind of agree with him there. I kind of agree the fact that in the half court, I think Indiana did a really good job defensively. They were switching, communicating more than they have most of the time this season. Boxing out is a huge issue. This team has got to find a way to find a body, put your rear end on him, and push him out and get the basketball, get the rebound, and let's push and go the other way. That was the biggest problem why Indiana was giving up so many offensive rebounds, man. They're not boxing out, and offensive players are just flying in free will and grabbing the ball and making plays for their team. So Indiana's got to find a way to do that. But the three-point defense was definitely improved. He goes on to talk about coming off a game with 19 turnovers against Nebraska and only 4 against the Buckeyes of Ohio State. Mike Woodson says, it brings a smile to my face. That's all I can tell you. He says, that was miserable sitting through that in Nebraska, just giving them the basketball, which they absolutely did. He goes on to say, we talked about it. We watched the game and we got back as a team. After I watched it a couple times, it was just awful. But we rebounded from it, learned from it, only had 4 turnovers today, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I would say that's very nice, Woody. I'd say that's very, very nice. And I will say this, don't expect that every game. I maybe not even expect that again. Only 4 turnovers in 40 minutes of basketball was ridiculous. Like, that is insane. The fact that not just any team, but this team was able to do that because we've seen the struggle at the guard position for a long time. And again, I think Xavier Johnson was a huge reason for that, but also just so many of those turnovers against Nebraska and that we were seeing early on were just unforced turnovers, bad passes, miscommunications, dribbling it off your foot. Like, all of those shot clock violations, like all those types of things that aren't totally forced by the defense, not steals or blocks, right? Those are the turnovers that kill you when you're just free willingly giving up the basketball to the other team. Now, if the other team steals it from you, or they jump in front of the pass, or they block your shot, or whatever the case may be, or even, like I said, if they force a 24-second violation, that's a different story. But throwing it out of bounds because your guy went this way and you threw it the other way, that's unacceptable. But it's something that Indiana did not do against the Buckeyes, and it kept them in the game. Because not only did Indiana force turnover or not commit turnovers, they forced turnovers as well. And that was a huge, huge part to make up for all those second chance points that the Buckeyes were able to get. He also went on to, speaking of that second chance points in the rebounding battle, he said a lot of it was because of how the ball was bouncing off the rim, and the big fella Felix, he had a lot to do with it. He kept balls alive. I told Ware and Malik, they were awful tonight in rebounding the basketball. Their bigs basically kicked our butts in terms of going to the glass. Yeah, I would say so. He said, you're not going to beat a lot of teams in the Big Ten with that kind of margin in terms of rebounding. We got away with it tonight, but we have to be much better as we go to Rutgers. And that's where we'll wrap up this segment, because he's absolutely right. Indiana cannot get out-rebounded by 22. That's insane. That is ridiculous. Unacceptable. And I'm glad that Woodson went to Malik Reneau, went to Khalil Ware, and said, look, you guys were terrible rebounding the ball. That is your job. Malik Reneau, Khalil Ware, even McKenzie and Baco, like, that is their job. They're the biggest ones on the floor for Indiana. Khalil Ware's 7 foot tall. He's 7 foot. He should be grabbing rebounds. It shouldn't be that difficult. And it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago, especially on the defensive end. The Hoosiers got to find a body. When that shot goes up, Indiana's doing this number right here. And for those of you on audio, I'm just looking. I'm watching, right? They're just watching the basketball and waiting to see where it bounces and hope that it comes right to them, and then they'll turn and go the other way. That's not how it works. When that shot goes up, you turn, find your man, put a body on him, and force him out from the basket to where they don't have an opportunity to get the rebound and get the basketball. That's what Indiana has to do. Take advantage of your height, because you have it, and your athleticism, right? With McKenzie and Baco and Khalil Ware and Malik Reneau at times, you have an athletic group of bigs. Get the rebounds. Help out your team, because this Indiana offense needs as much help as they can get when it comes to extra possessions. And the defense doesn't need to be defending any longer than it has to. So if you can clean that up, even coming off a win, you're going to be in a really good spot. And it sounds like to me that head coach Mike Woodson was very pleased with the win. Rebounding, not so much. Understanding that the Hoosiers played good, not great. And they've got some things to get better and improve on before the rest of Big Ten play. And that starts with Rutgers this week. And then Minnesota on Friday. And then Purdue the following Tuesday. Yeah, if you get out rebounded by 22 against Purdue, you're going to lose by 22 on the scoreboard. So Mike Woodson's comments following the Indiana and Ohio State game as the Hoosiers are victorious on a Saturday night inside of Assembly Hall. Coming up on our final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look around some Indiana athletics, including the women's team that got a nice win over the weekend in the Big Ten as well. They continue to climb the rankings. We'll kind of see where they sit in bracketology right now. Plus, we'll look at some updates in the transfer portal for Indiana football and new head coach Curt Cignetti. That's coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but can we talk for just a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my mom, dad, or even my grandmother or one of my kids got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from a life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinuses, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get $20 off of your first order. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day as we get you started on this Monday to get your week started. Got a lot of games, a lot of things coming up this week for Indiana athletics, and we've been talking Indiana basketball recruiting. We talked a little comments from the win over the weekend, but let's look at a little Indiana women's basketball, shall we? As the women's team got a nice win on the women's team got a nice win over the weekend. They were on the road, the 14th ranked Lady Hoosiers were, and they take down Nebraska, got a little revenge for the men's team, am I right? They go on the road, and what some people were calling this maybe a trap game for this women's team, whatever. Indiana goes on the road and wins 91-69 as the Hoosiers still just one loss on the year, and that puts them at 4-0 in the Big Ten with a win on the road at Rutgers back a few weeks ago, Illinois at home, Michigan at home. That was a blowout, 80-59, and then this win on the road at Nebraska. Here's what's coming up for this team. You're at home again this week against Penn State. And then coming up this weekend, the biggest game of the year in the Big Ten. It's going to happen twice. This one's the tougher of the two. The Lady Hoosiers are on the road taking on Caitlin Clark and number 4, Iowa. That's going to be on Fox. That's going to be on national television. And I have a feeling this will be, viewership-wise, this will be one of the highest rated games of the year when you have two superstars going at it, with Caitlin Clark, of course, from Iowa, who, I mean, you gotta appreciate what she's doing, man. She's an absolute baller. But so is Mackenzie Holmes. Like, Mackenzie Holmes is doing the thing. I mean, she is just the dog leader for this Indiana team against Nebraska. 22 points, 6 rebounds, had an assist as well, playing in just 27 minutes of time. She is just rolling right now. She's averaging just under 20 points a game, 7 rebounds, 1.5 assists so far this season. And she's shooting the ball extremely well. 66% from the floor, 72% from the line for a forward. That is really, really good. And she is your senior leader by a lot. And, you know, the battle between her and Caitlin Clark in that game coming up against Iowa, it's not going to be them going against each other like one-on-one, head-to-head, right? One's a unbelievable guard and the other one's an unbelievable forward. But it's the battle of those two teams, and two of the, not just the best teams in the Big Ten, but two of the best teams in the country. Right? These two teams are top 15. Iowa, as of the time of this recording, they are 4. Indiana is 14. Indiana with just the lone loss on the season. Iowa has a loss on the season as well, and that's to Kansas State back in their, 4th game of the season. So really, really fun. Gonna be really interesting to watch it. Look, how big of a game would this be for Indiana if they could pull it off? Because like I said, they play this game twice, does Indiana and Iowa. This one is on the road at Iowa. That place is going to be packed out on a night game over the weekend on the 13th. But then later on in the season, the third to last game for the Lady Hoosiers, they welcome the Hawkeyes back here in Bloomington. So a chance to get a big win, a statement win right there before Selection Sunday. And you look at where the latest bracketology is. This was updated on the 5th. So if this is outdated by the time you watch it, I do apologize. But here's where Indiana sits. The women's team sits right now. You look at Iowa, they are a 1 seed right now that Indiana will be taking on after they play Penn State. Got to get through that game first. Don't want to overlook that by any means. But you start looking at some of these teams in here in this bracketology, and you find Indiana as a 4 seed right now in the women's bracket. So I think that can improve. I think that's a good spot for this team. I mean, again, they're top 15 in the country right now, a chance to improve with some tough games in Big Ten play. But as a 4 seed, you have a chance to bump that up with a win over Iowa. So looking forward to that coming up this weekend. Also wanted to talk about really quickly here some football updates and news. Kind of taking a look at the transfer portal for new head coach Curt Cignetti. They've been busy, man. They've been busy. Gosh, they've been busy when it comes to high school recruiting, transfer portal, all that type of stuff. We've talked about the horrificness of the calendar. Yes, that's a word, I think, of the calendar for college football, man. It's unbelievable. Incoming transfers right now. This is just the transfer portal. 21 different players, new players will be coming through the transfer portal. And I want to highlight some that are non-James Madison players. We got a couple of minutes left here. Non-James Madison players that are coming through the transfer portal, because we could do a whole episode literally on just the amount of players coming from JMU and following Curt Cignetti from the transfer portal or high school recruiting. But some of the guys outside of that threshold, Elijah Green, the running back from North Carolina, really, really solid. He's from the state of Georgia, played at North Carolina, 3 years and 27 different games, had 550 yards, 8 touchdowns. Wasn't their go-to guy, but he has 2 years of eligibility and could be a go-to guy for Indiana. He's also able to catch some passes out of the backfield as well. Defensive back Terry Jones from Old Dominion, the second Old Dominion player to transfer here, along with Sean Osbury, the second. I think we've talked about him before on this program. A long list of James Madison players. You pick up a kicker from Louisiana Monroe. Can't ever have too many of those. From Louisiana Monroe, a long snapper, Mark Langston from Georgia Southern, another running back that's from James Madison, and highlighting that because Indiana has stacked up the running back room, much needed, right? Much needed in that running back room. Here's what I'm probably most excited about the room-wise. 3 legit wide receivers out of the transfer portal. Something that the Hoosiers have been looking for, just stud playmakers on the outside. You pick up Keshawn Williams, the wide receiver from Wake Forest. You pick up Miles Cross, the receiver from Ohio. And you pick up Miles Price, the receiver from Texas Tech. And you start looking at some of their numbers. 5 touchdowns for Williams, 10 touchdowns for Price. You had 8 touchdowns for Miles Cross. Those are over multiple years. Only bad part is, and it's not a horrible thing, but those receivers all just have 1 year of eligibility left. So almost like rentals, but maybe you can use them to spark this program, right? To kind of boost the offense a little bit until you can recruit some of those receivers. That's what those guys are going to be used for. And hopefully it works out with that. And you also picked up a quarterback in the transfer portal too with Curtis Rourke from Ohio. So lots of good additions. Lots of good players coming in, and that doesn't even include some others that I didn't mention, plus all of the James Madison guys. So overall, I think Curt Cignetti's done a good job just getting guys in the door. We can worry about the level of talent they are later. We got to get some guys in here because when a coaching change happens, so many guys leave, understandably so. And look, you got to just fill a roster and try to play in what's going to be a much different Big Ten coming up this fall. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. Be sure you follow the show on X. You can find us at Locked On Hoosiers. You can find me on there as well. Just search at Goins, the number 2, JACOB. You can find me on there as well. Subscribe here on the YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it. Like the video as well. Helps us out very much. And you can turn on notifications wherever you get your podcast. Hey, be sure you check out Locked On Sports Today as well. If you haven't checked that out on YouTube, be sure you do that. It's really cool. You'll see us on there every now and then. If you're looking for just some general sports content, it's all of our Locked On shows combined into a 24-hour stream 7 days a week. So go check that out as well. We'll be back tomorrow, Hoosier fans. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.